欢迎回到我们的座谈会现场。Welcome back to our panel discussion。接下来是今天的最后一场座谈，亚洲投资人的挑战：尽职治理及气候相关报告。We now come to our final panel discussion of the day: Investor Challenges in Asia, Stewardship and Climate-Related Reporting。我们非常荣幸邀请到以下嘉宾。We're honored to welcome moderator Julia Tay, partner Asia Pacific Public Policy Leader at EY Singapore. Welcome. Welcome. 与谈人 panelist Judy Tang, Associate Manager of Engagement at Federated Hermes. Tanya Xu, Lead Global ESG Analyst at Sumitomo Mitsui DS Asset Management. Welcome. Alan Zhu, Senior Investment Sustainability Analyst at Franklin Templeton. Welcome. 有请各位讲者上台。Let's now invite our speakers to the stage. Welcome.
All right, everyone. Very good afternoon to you. I have a very important task. I have to keep the energy level of this last panel up, and I have to finish by 3:30 sharp, right? So I hope that you will give us support for this exciting panel. In fact, first of all, I want to thank the TDCC for inviting me and us onto this conference. It has been really good discussion so far. And I'm really honored to be next to these three beautiful young ladies because they really remind me of the next generation of investors that we want to nurture. Amma, I picked up from your speech today that we have very few stewardship resources. So on average in the industry, you're thinking 5%. So you are looking at the 5% here, right? Okay. All right, great. So today our session will discuss challenges that are faced by investors in Asia, including those related to stewardship practices and climate reporting. And I think we are very, very privileged to have Elaine with us because she herself is a climate report preparer within her organization. And we will also hear from this panel how we can achieve better reporting, including being prepared for future reporting on nature and biodiversity. So I will start off with the first question, right? Stewardship is vital for promoting sustainable corporate behavior. So my question to the panelists is, what are the key challenges that you face in practicing stewardship in Asia, and how are they different compared to more matured markets like Europe and North America? So maybe I can invite Tanya to start off.
Sure. Thank you so much, Julia, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm already feeling the good vibe from the last plenary session here today. So it's a great honor to be sitting with the panel today, and it's my great pleasure to be back to Taiwan after 8 years. So thank you so much, TDCC, for having me here on the stage. So just a little bit of background information on myself first. So we, Sumitomo Mitsui DS Asset Management, is the asset management arm of Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, or the SMBC Group, headquartered in Tokyo, Japan. So in SMDM, we strongly believe that stewardship is the important lever to propel sustainable corporate behaviors across the board and generate positive corporate value in the longer term. So we have been striving to practice this as a paramount part of our fulfillment to the fiduciary duty. So today I'm gonna, getting back to the question, today I'm gonna share some general observations that we have practicing stewardship activities in the Asia-Pac region. So I think what's intriguing about my sharing is the way stewardship diverges from the more mature and well-established markets such as the EU and UK. So I think partially the reason being like local context and evolving market dynamics has been hugely different. So I think the first point of observation is that So when we talk about stewardship or understanding of sustainability issues in Asia-Pac region, like 5 or 10 years ago, the general impression would be it's blanketly bad. But after a few years of market development, and I think we have come to a stage that, that is presenting a more fragmented landscape of understanding and awareness across the board. So on one hand, we have some more mature market within the region that has companies doing a little bit more than those in other markets. But at the same time, we are still observing hugely different level of practices and level of understanding of sustainability issues among different markets, different sectors, and even within the same sector, different individual companies as well. But there is one particular case in point that I would like to share here about how we think stewardship has demonstrated its ability to effectively close the gap between close the awareness gap between companies' current understanding and the desired level. So it is this one particular case that we have done with a Chinese Chinese chemical company that we engaged with a while back. So essentially, the management at first stage was quite reluctant to talk about their ESG activities or share details that's beyond their current ESG disclosure. And I gradually realized that it's not because they didn't want to, it's because they failed to identify the interplay between sustainability and their actual business model in a meaningful and a material manner. But when we pivot the questions and discussions to the more business relevant areas, such as production processes, they started going on and on about like the actions they have been taking for years, such as how they have upgraded the input material to make the whole process a lot more cost efficient and less emission intensive. About how from point A to B, each of the steps could be optimized and controlled through technology innovation and automation, so the whole process becomes much safer with less human interactions. And all this time that they have been doing those activities, they haven't realized that these are actually super important to ESG. So I think in that way, stewardship really served as a strong communication channel both ways. So not only the investors are getting what we are trying to seek from the corporates, the companies are also in turn effectively draw a link between what they are presenting in the sustainability report and what they are trying to achieve as a business. And the other challenge I want to share here is about like in many EM economies in Asia-Pac, that we are facing a duality of challenges to pursue rapid economic expansion, and at the same time, embarking a decarbonization pathway as well. So that unique difference dictates our sustainability strategy and corresponding stewardship strategies for investors within the region to be vastly different from other mature markets such as EU and North America. And the other thing I want to highlight here about the uniqueness is on governance side. So a significant amount of listed companies here in the Asia-Pac are either like a SOE or family firm or founder firm or part of sprawling conglomerates. So these unique governance structures may very well hinder transparency or complicate engagement processes, or in some cases lead to problematic management quality and capital efficiency issues. So that requires the stewardship activities in this region to be more bespoke and specific to those individual cases. So finally, I think regulatory framework plays a role in these challenges as well. So I think in a lot of the Asian markets, stewardship-related codes and disclosure practices are either non-existent or quite outdated, as a matter of fact. So I think the lack of effective and timely regulation really demands the stewardship practitioners here from us investors to take a more bespoke and sometimes even relationship-driven approach from time to time. So that's what I would like to share here. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. I picked up 3 keywords, fragmentation, linkage, and bespoke. So maybe I can turn to you, Judy. Yep.
Well, first of all, thank you for staying till the afternoon. I know it's a very, very difficult period, and I'll get back to normal. Thank you for having me. My name is Judy. I look after our Asia and Global Emerging Markets engagement function within our team. Very happy to be here. So back to our question. Yeah, actually, we operate in the same environment. We face similar challenges. It would be weird if we have different challenges. So number 1 is fragmentation. To add a little bit of context here, you know, like we're currently in an environment where we're actually at a sweet spot where everyone's trying to race to the top. Everyone's comparing notes. Every country's comparing its notes. So there are different evolutions or iterations coming up, but at the end of the day, it's still differences. And I spend a lot of time, my colleague Sonia is here, we spend a lot of time comparing notes with our peers who cover other markets in Asia. But then at the same time, our thoughts are coming from the top, which is sometimes from the West. And we spend a lot of time making sure this globalization approach makes sense, is fit for purpose, and actually delivers message and engagement. It's not like because you have a certain way of thinking that works in the West, for example. I should say I sit in London. So you can just come into Taiwan and say, I want you to do this, without understanding the history. So a lot of this has to go on, and we spend a lot of time convincing them this does not work as well. So this is our kind of challenge as an organization. If we talk to companies, there is also, very similarly, there is a lot of misunderstanding, or in certain cases, misalignment. Misunderstanding would be, people would think, oh, it's just E, S, and G, period. How is this relevant to investment? But actually, what we do stewardship is way beyond E, S, and G. There are risk, there are cyber. It's all about the longevity of your investment. So that is one. And another thing is, they think maybe they would, I'll give people benefit of the doubt. Sometimes it's about prioritizing resources. They think there are certain types of investors or counterparties they want to talk to, so they just give access to them. Sometimes we spend a lot of time getting access to just IRs, even though we might have a significant position. Or sometimes it's really difficult to get access to the board. Just now Amar mentioned it, just now I think Edward mentioned it. Getting access to the board is a number 1 priority we should be focusing on. And we actually spend a lot of time thinking, strategizing how we can get access to it without disrupting the ecosystem, because we want things to work well locally in each of these markets. So this is very difficult. And if I just have a chat with my colleague in the European team next to me, they can easily say, oh, tomorrow I'm meeting a board director. It's kind of for granted, because logically it makes sense. Like, they represent minority investors, so it makes sense for them to be that spokesperson to interact with investors. I think this is something that we can look up to. We have a lot of local challenges to overcome. You know, sometimes is the respect that you have to give for the very experienced board members. You cannot just tell them what to do. So there's a lot of convincing that's required that has to funnel from the investment side to the IR side, and then to the board if they have the right channel to escalate this kind of preference, let's just say.
Thank you very much for your sharing. For me, I work in a global firm as well. I mean, EY operates in 150 countries. And usually I would have a counterpart in Americas, and she only needs to focus on Washington. My counterpart in EMEA just needs to focus on Brussels. But my job takes me from the top of Japan all the way down to Australia. So I can actually understand what you're talking about in terms of fragmentation. And I like your answer about, you know, having a global mindset but looking at local insights. And I really picked up your point about, you know, ESG is not about E, S, and G, and we are trying to find enough acronyms to take into account what's happening, right? So ESG doesn't have a T, and you know what T stands for nowadays. So yeah, but really managing the risk for longevity of the business. Right, thank you very much for that. And I really want to turn to one of the other topics that we have on our panel. So in terms of climate-related reporting, it has been advancing. As an accountant, I've been watching the trend in terms of the quality of reporting. But I think in terms of concerns about whether the quality is meeting standards, I think we are still concerned about whether it is consistent and whether it is transparent enough and meeting investor needs. So I want to turn to Elaine. Can you share some of the challenges you face in preparing climate-related reporting, and how do you handle these challenges, and what actions would you like to see to help address these challenges?
Thank you, Julia, and thanks TDCC for having me here. My current role in Franklin Templeton has a focus on sustainability reporting. And as the author of my firm's very first TCFD report, I had gone through a lot of challenges and setbacks. So there's so much I could share from that experience. And I think as an asset manager, we actually have a unique dual perspective when it comes to climate reporting. As an investor, we do have certain expectations on the companies we invested in. And as an asset manager and a listed company ourselves, we also facing the expectations from asset owners and our shareholders. So we do see both sides of the equation. But today I would like to focus more on the latter perspective. And I think the first challenge I faced, which might not sound like a big deal now, was catching up with the fast-changing regulations and all the different kinds of reporting frameworks. My climate reporting journey starts with the environmental-related risk management disclosure required by the Monetary Authority of Singapore in early 2022. And very soon, similar requirements emerged in Hong Kong and Malaysia. It felt like overnight, climate reporting became mandatory in multiple Asian markets. And each jurisdiction introduced their own nuances, like Hong Kong is focused on climate-related risk, while Malaysia is focused on ESG risk. When I reached out to my European colleagues for data support, I was hit with a wave of acronyms, EET, SFDR, CSRD. It was overwhelming, and that led to the second big challenge I ran into. As a global company, we operate in so many countries, and each country has its own set of rules. In EU, we are facing EU taxonomy, SFDR, CSRD, and in UK, it's about SRD. And in Asia, we have ASEAN taxonomy, and the reporting requirement is mainly around TCFD and ISSB. And that experience showed me how important it is to have a clear and consistent way of reporting. Not only does it reduce the reporting burden on companies, but it also enhances comparability and benchmarking, helping us to have better and more informed decisions. And one thing we have always been doing is supporting and encouraging the adoption of a standardized reporting framework. As a group, we have been a public supporter of TCFD since 2021. And there's one trend that works in my favor, is that most of the regulators across Asia all pointed to TCFD as the recommended reporting framework. And over the years, I've also witnessed the evolving of ESG reporting, the regulatory requirement, and the reporting standards. There's an ongoing trend towards global convergence, with ISSB playing a key role on the progress. And there's another one challenge I would like to highlight, is that TCFD reporting is ongoing. It's an ongoing process. It requires an annual update. And every time before we start to update the report, I always take a moment to reflect on what's changed over the last year. And I think reporting is actually the final step of a process. It is an output. And it's heavily depending on having the right input to get there. And to ensure the quality of the report, the input, you need to have a strong governance structure and a solid data foundation. And I would say a robust sustainability governance structure is really the backbone of credible climate reporting. And actually, the first chapter of TCFD report is about governance. Well, those regulatory requirements and the international well-recognized sustainability reporting standards can offer valuable reference points, but they cannot cover every scenario. And in practice, there are so many details, need a case-by-case judgment. And actually, each company design their structures, including the sustainability governance structure, based on their own operational environment, business model, and regulatory landscape. And none of these framework, this structure can be built up overnight. It takes time. And lastly, I would like to touch on, which might sound a bit cliche, is data. The main issues we faced include data collection and the quality, things like Scope 3 emission, regional data gap, and reliance on third party and some technical limitations. We've realized that relying on just 1 to 2 ESG service provider isn't enough. What we are aiming for is a more flexible and tailored approach. One can fit all the requirements from each investment team. So to make that happen, we have a dedicated data and research team that is focused on addressing all the sustainability data related challenges across the firm. And that includes managing central ESG data contracts, supporting the due diligence on the data vendors, developing analytical tool and thematic research. To wrap up, I'd say climate reporting is really a journey. Like the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. Things are constantly evolving from regulations to those reporting standards. We need to catch up with these changes. We also need to be staying grounded in our own business context. So having a strong governance structure and a solid data foundation are key steps if we really want to make progress.
Thanks, Elaine. Very good points. I hear your frustration about acronyms. I think we have thousands of acronyms just in the sustainability world, and good point about cutting through the clutter and sort of just trying to get something globally consistent. And also hearing your point about let's not let the tail wag the dog, right? So reporting is just really the end, but really the means to get there is really much more important. And lastly, on data integrity. So all very good points. So turning to you, Judy, I think in your engagement with companies, what additional challenges do they face? And have they ever spoken about what actions they would like to see taken by regulators, by policymakers, by investors to help address those challenges?
It's a very good question. I think it's a very mixed bag in Asia for multiple reasons. And I mean, Elaine gave a very long, very detailed description. So you can imagine if you have to implement it, it is that difficult. And I'm sure a couple of you might have gone through this very annoying process of having to figure out what all these acronyms mean, what do they actually mean in business context, and then how am I going to convince budget for this, who I'm going to, so many providers, who should I go to, how do I manage my data vendors? So I think these are the same kind of problems faced by companies. And let's just zoom in a little bit more on the ones that have relatively less resources. The ones, I think the bigger ones probably have more resources, so it's easier for them to navigate. For them, sometimes it's about being siloed. Imagine being in an office, suddenly you have a report that covers the whole business process, but at the end of the day, they actually haven't had proper touch points with certain BUs, certain support functions. And this is, like, as a human being, this is just a huge stretch, to be honest. So I think companies should be able to think how they can empower them, to propose these ideas, propose those challenges. They're like, hi, I have this thing that's going on. Why do we need this? Maybe it's a RFP requirement from clients. Maybe it's an investor requirement. If you're able to help them transmit this kind of information, maybe through a top-down approach with the right kind of management adoption, it makes things so much easier for them. So the next time, if someone's preparing the report and then they go knock on the door of a certain BU, they'll be like, okay, I know what's going on. Okay, I'll give you my info. So it's all about breaking all these organizational, psychological barriers, I'd say. And again, at the end of the day, you also have to create an environment that you feel more comfortable for a bottom-up approach as well, not just top-down. Bottom-up as in the actual implementation of things, not just strategy, big ideas. They are able to reflect and say, okay, this data is currently just impossible. Please don't make it a stretch, right? So people have to feel psychologically safe enough to share all these information. I think it requires a holistic, organizational kind of assessment to make things easier.
Thank you very much. I thought those were very good points. I think you used the word empower, and I can imagine that actually a very important element is the strong tone at the top. And so I'm so glad that there are actually countries in ASEAN, for example, Singapore, Malaysia, that actually, encourages boards to have dedicated resources. And they also mandate, the stock exchanges in these two countries actually mandate sustainability training for board of directors. And then to Jane's point earlier on about ISSB training, they're actually coming in May to do capacity building and training for listed companies. And this will be conducted by the vice chair of ISSB herself in Malaysia and Singapore. I want to move away sort of now from climate related reporting to actually the topic of transition plan itself. So again, it's not just about reporting, it's about transforming your business to be one of longevity, right? So, and we know that climate change continues to pose great business risks. So I wanted to sort of pose this question to both Tanya and Judy. How do Asian companies fare in terms of their climate transition risks? And do you think they are adequately disclosing their climate risks? Maybe I can have Tanya to start off first. Yeah.
Sure, no problem. Thanks a lot, Julia, for that question. I think as many speakers today have been alluding to earlier, so Asia Pac has presented one of the huge contrasts in terms of climate narrative. So on one hand, we are the fastest adopter of renewable energy adoptions, but while topping the world coal consumption level at the same time. So in our observation, it's kind of a mixture of a lot of progresses tempered by some notable challenges as well. So I think the first thing I want to highlight about my observation here is the preference or the priority of reporting a carbon intensity reduction target rather than absolute emission level target. So I think that's partially reflective of the expanding industrial base of the region. So in many cases, it makes a lot of sense for companies, it's very much feasible for companies to report their production unit of emissions rather than chasing a declining total emissions level when the whole scale of production is growing up rapidly. But on the other hand, it also complicates the benchmarking towards more established market as well as locks in more carbon when the economy scales further. So I think in that respect, we have a data point to share that I think in Asia Pac, the carbon intensity has been decreased by over 50% from the year 2000 level, but the emission level overall on the absolute level is still more than the half of the entire world. And the other observation I want to make here is that Asia Pac has seen elevated importance of quantifying climate risks across the board, which is a great sign. So we have seen a lot of companies trying to use tools and analysis such as internal carbon pricing to steer their investment decisions and operational strategies amid the rapid rollout of various emission trading schemes within the region these days. On scenario testing, we are also seeing a lot of momentum positively as well. I think last year's study survey has showed that among a lot of the APAC listed companies, major APAC listed companies, around 45% of them are reporting qualitative and quantitative scenario analysis at the same time. About the similar proportion is doing qualitative reporting on scenario analysis only. So I think that signifies there have been a lot of positive momentums, but remains a work in progress. So the other thing I want to highlight here about a real concern is the use of carbon credits, which could turn the conversation to the contentious directions from time to time. I still vividly remember the engagement case we had last year with a huge internet platform that claims that they would include Scope 3 emissions in their long-term net zero targets, but would use a large chunk of their fulfillment through the purchase of voluntary carbon credits, which definitely raised a lot of eyebrows in the room. So talking about Scope 3, the under-reporting of Scope 3 is also a missing part of the jigsaw. I'm not saying that companies are not doing that. So I'm just saying probably they haven't been doing that enough at the current stage. So we have seen in the recent few years a lot more companies started to measure and disclose their Scope 3 emissions. But at the same time, when you look into the details of it, the category breakdown has been limited at this stage, and there has been restricted insight in terms of further analysis on the supply chain oversight of the certain companies. So I think that to think on a positive note, I think with the global standard of further converging, such as ISSB reaching fuller interoperability within the region, I think that problem, that issue would be partially resolved as well. So taking all those considerations and internalize them as our own investment and ESG investing strategy. So we have actually refined our focus in terms of measuring and gauging climate risks to focus more about the transition and physical risks of the climate assessment. So we are still trying to scrutinize net zero goals and targets of the companies these days, but also we are trying to put more attention on the feasibility and the credibility of the decarbonization pathways that these corporates are trying to present to investors. So that involves a lot of more detailed data points, such as the interim targets of emission reduction, the performance of emission reduction, and also the pertaining technology dependencies of it. And we also look to assess if companies are aligning their decarbonization pathways with the internationally recognizable methodologies such as SBTi and TPI. And in the recent years, we have also become increasingly more attentive to forward-looking metrics such as sustainable CapEx and OpEx, plus green revenue streams against the applicable taxonomies within the region. So we are also trying to extend our climate analysis to physical risks as well as part of our more comprehensive climate analysis. So especially upon how companies are faced with higher physical risks with their assets resilience into the future. And I think scenario analysis and the analysis of their subsequent adaptive strategies would becoming more indispensable in the future and analysis of our climate kind of investing framework. So it's within all those expectations that we have recently formulated and experimented our own climate transition investment framework, which is incorporating a lot of the above mentioned metrics and trying to encapsulate a more nuanced, region-specific, and time-bound brown to green spectrum that is striving to capture the ever-evolving landscape of climate transition opportunities and risks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It seems like it is a very positive picture. So, I mean, I guess the proof is in the pudding, right? When you mentioned that good data point about the APEC carbon intensity coming down by 50%, you also mentioned about elevation of APEC. And then, of course, you know, the great momentum that we're having in terms of scenario testing. So maybe I can turn to Judy. What else are you sort of observing in the companies that you deal with? Yeah.
To be frank, I don't have anything profound to add to what Tanya has said because, again, it's a macro problem. But I'll give a little bit more specifics or more targeted points. So, first of all, I have to say, please all give ourselves a pat in the back because I've seen a lot of improvements every year, every quarter. You see all these like ad hoc publications. It's not easy. Like we read figures, but you have to put these figures into something that you can back up with. So we're seeing a lot of improvement, and improvement is exciting. Saturation is not exciting. So that is a great thing. Number two is I think Taiwan is great. Like the ones who are connected, they have demonstrated a good amount of sophistication behind their analysis, and I personally learn a lot. I sometimes use them to share as best practices with my peers who sit in the Europe team or with other Asian team peers. And some of them I'm seeing integration with nature, which is something that we love seeing because from a resource perspective, you cannot assume every company has a resource for climate and then nature, and then at some point you realize, you have to think about them together. So I think the leaders are already just thinking about them together, and we all know climate and nature are intertwined. So that's one thing. Number two is on the quantitative side of things, I have to say, versus Europe, yes, we're starting to see a little bit more numbers coming up, but it's more like a headline figure. That is good enough to start a conversation, but probably not enough for further analysis. So it is a very good starting point, though, I have to say. It is not easy, and I know sometimes we have a conservative mindset, or through engagements we learn from company, that it's not great to publish something that you don't know about the future. You want certainty over some forecast or estimate, but investors all know, or consumers of the report all know, that it's about carving out the direction or the pillars of risk that you're seeing, or the upside opportunities, the product opportunities you're seeing. I mean, even the financial news, it's not completely accurate in terms of forecasts. Central banks make wrong assumptions. So it's all about the understanding the thinking behind it. As long as it's credible, it's more pragmatic, let's just say. We think it would be credible then. If it's not like some 天文数字, right? So that is something that we're looking for. And ourselves, quickly, we want to be able to have this kind of conversation with companies. We want good, tangible points. It can be a mix of qualitative, it can be a mix of quantitative information. At the end of the day, it's about backing your conversation up with actual thoughts behind it. So we want to see this. We want to see companies actively outlining the challenges behind it. I think that makes your transition plan more realistic. If you give something that looks golden 100%, it's ridiculous. We would think it's just maybe written by some consultant. No offense, I'm sorry. I have to emphasize, you have to integrate with your consultants. They give the expert advice, you give the practical business advice.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much for your views. And I think, you know, on your point about how progressive Taiwan is, another point that maybe I can share with this audience is that I'm really impressed that the regulators here actually require companies to have an internal control over their systems of reporting on sustainability, almost like a SOX-like kind of internal controls, and I've not seen that in any part of elsewhere in APEC. And thank you for talking about this thing about integration with nature, which brings me to very quickly to the next topic. I mean, we want to leave climate now and think about what's coming on board, right? So there will be new topics such as nature, biodiversity, and even human capital. So I think I want to sort of start off with Elaine. With your experience in preparing climate-related reporting, can you share how you would get prepared for reporting on new topics, and what lessons learned from climate-related reporting would you apply when you get there? Yeah.
Well, right now, we already have a robust sustainability governance structure in place, along with well-established project management process for sustainability reporting. So I think the workflows, the reviewing steps we used for climate reporting can pretty much be reused for the other kind of sustainability reporting. For example, since we already have a project management process that is tried and tested, so we can quickly set up the relevant working groups and get the right people there and kick off the workflows. While at the same time, we also recognize that nature, biodiversity, and human capital are quite different from climate. They bring their own challenges. First, it's a lot more complex. Their impact tend to be more local and very specific to the context. So I think the way we report on them must be more nuanced. Second, it's about data. I think the data isn't there yet. I feel it's very quite hard for company to measure their impact on biodiversity than saying tracking carbon emission. And third, when it comes to nature transition planning, to be honest, we are still in the early stage, and there isn't a lot of precedent to follow. So given these challenges, we are currently still monitoring and learning from what is happening in the space.
Right. Thank you very much. I'm conscious of time, and I just want to open up to the floor for any questions.
现在是现场提问时间，有任何贵宾有需要提问的部分吗？可以踊跃的举手发问，我们会把麦克风递过去。好，在那边，我们有请麦克风递往舞台右手边这边。感谢贵宾的踊跃发问，等一下还会有下一位。
Okay, I'm Wayne from Cathay Securities. I have a question in regarding to the small and medium-sized business ESG reporting. In Taiwan, because of the newest regulation this year, all companies need to file ESG reporting, and about 800 new companies are going to be filing for the first time, and they only represent about 6% of the market value, which means they are all small and medium-sized companies. And one of the things that it's going to be challenging for most of those companies is that a lot of those portfolio indicators or rating requirements are kind of focusing on the big companies, but for those small and medium-sized companies are sort of being a challenge for those small and medium-sized companies, but they are a big number here in Taiwan. 800 companies means about almost half of the companies in Taiwan, listed companies in Taiwan. So from the analyst perspective, I want to ask those panel speakers, what do you think are sort of the way to address this part of the market segment, and how do you engage with those companies?
Yeah, so I guess if I can summarize that question, I think how we addressing how to apply the requirements on a proportional basis even to the smaller companies. Yeah.
First of all, I'm not a regulator, so I'm not going to speak on their behalf. But here's my very humble opinion. I think, even in engagement, sometimes even with banks, we ask, how are you helping small and medium companies meet their requirements? Because let's be frank, the big ones, they have a lot of resources. So I pose the same question to regulators or whoever is in the ecosystem. How are you performing your role in helping them make their jobs easier when they have limited resources? And I have to say Taiwan is pretty good in this, as in this morning there's free ISS report, there's free Glass-Lewis report. We have to pay for these. So I think this is a good starting point in doing this kind of things. And obviously I don't have the full picture, but I think the philosophy behind it is you need to think of what kind of basic infrastructure or even just capacity building kind of needs they need. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just throwing in my 2 cents on this question as well. So I'm strongly seconding what Judy has said. Engagement and stewardship has really been helpful in terms of getting more information from small media size firms as well. Just briefly sharing one of the cases that we experienced not long ago, because I think these problems are quite prevalent, not only in Taiwan market. It's very well like commonly seen in like China, in Hong Kong, in India, especially in those emerging markets where ESG has been not very well established for many years. So this one case that is that engagement we did with a very small India material company. So so historically there hasn't been any structural ESG reporting, and there has been very limited information that we could seek from MSCI or Sustainalytics as the third-party rating vendors. But when we were trying to have rounds of conversations with this company to get to have a better holistic picture of how their sustainability risk and opportunities could be factored into our investment thesis, I think we have seen a lot of positive surprises from the management themselves on the CEOs and CFOs and basically the entire C-level presenting in these engagement meetings, trying to articulate their sustainability strategies in front of the investors and their working level people who are going to execute a lot of things that are aligned with the investors' expectations. So through those kind of conversations, there's actually they actually exceed the original expectation of fulfilling the engagement task and just take a box of as seeing the company as an investable target. So I think that actually went way better than we thought, and we are actually rewarding the company with more thoughts and more favorable opinions after learning about their sustainability practices and their top management's devotions on such kind of directions. So I think those could be anecdotal from time to time. Not all the companies would have the devotion and the resources to complete something like that, but I think those would be the examples that many small and medium firms could look up to within those markets.
Right, thank you very much. I think it's good to know that investors are rewarding companies when they do the right thing. 我们应该没有时间再多一个问多一个问题吧？
那我们最后一个问题，现场有任何贵宾想要提问吗？我们最后一个问题。好，我们中间请把麦克风递往中间，谢谢。
Hi. I remember Judy mentioned like companies provided some quantitative estimates in their sustainability reports. And I'm wondering, from investors' perspective, how do you validate those estimates are correct or not?
This is a great question, and I ask myself every day when I read those reports. If I see an amazing number, I'll be like, is this really this lucrative, or did you just prop something up? So yes, part of my job is to validate that. How do I do that? I interact with companies. To be honest, nobody knows. No one has a crystal ball. But I'll be very frank here. So if you have a conversation with a company and they present you with this figure, if they're able to explain their assumptions, where they get the source of information, or which teams were behind it, you get a level of assurance already. The actual number is a secondary problem. Because if you throw out like an amazing number, but you don't know how you came up to this number, problematic. Yeah, so obviously, as we go on with different iterations, accuracy will be the next focus, but at least we see companies trying to achieve that as a very good sign. Yes.
And I think with many countries coming up with mandatory assurance in the future, I think it will help. I think we really have to close. That's the instructions to me. So maybe just to wrap up, can each one of you just make a very short comment on how you wish to personally drive the agenda for better investor stewardship and ESG reporting? Maybe Elaine, you want to start off first?
For me, I think better investment stewardship comes from holding ourselves accountable. And I want to support the ESG reporting that is not just about ticking box, but really reflect the real progress. And that means we need to push for clear and more consistent data, and working closely with companies, peers, and regulators to make that happen. And at the end of the day, I think better decision comes from better information. It is our fiduciary duty to push for that on behalf of our clients.
Right, thank you. Tanya and Judy, short comment, please. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So I'm really trying to end things on a positive note. So what I'm just trying to say here is that against all the pushbacks and probably adversities we have been witnessing, especially in the recent few months, I think it's nothing more than a wake-up call for people in our line of work to stay more true and stay more focused on what we have been doing all along. So a short comment from my side is that be steadfast and stay grounded and keep doing whatever we have always believed in, and we will hopefully get there one day. Thank you.
For me, it's number one, collaboration. Please flow ideas, discuss it. Number two is make it business oriented. Again, be grounded, have your strategies be grounded on your business. So whatever Trump comes in, you will still be resilient because you have your reasons behind it. It's highly relevant to the business. And yeah, I think just do it and then modify.
Thank you, everyone, for your insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our moderator and 3 panelists. Please remain on stage as we will now take a group photo.